behind me.
All right. All right.
Okay. Put this behind me, that should be all right.
All right. So my topic for my project is basically about the injuries that come along with playing football and kind of how they affect the players long term a little bit. So it has a lot to do with like it's a lot of head injuries and stuff like that. So there's a lot of like helmets and stuff like that that are involved. So my first question.
One of the things you should also understand too, there are a lot of body injuries that it probably has probably twice as many body injuries. I've had probably 20 of my friends have hip surgery, just have hip replacements, knee joint replacements, things of that nature. I've been fortunate, but part of the game comes with a lot of injury, unfortunately.
Yes. I saw about your abdomen injury that you had in Buffalo. There certainly are a lot of injuries. There's a lot of knee stuff on there too, with like ACLs and stuff like that too. Mm-hmm. So, a lot of injuries.
All right, so I'm ready.
All right. So when you were playing football in college, before you entered the NFL, did you know about all of the risks and injuries that were associated with it? Like, did anyone talk to you about those risks?
No. No, that part of the game is never really discussed, especially in college. I think so many colleges think you're just blessed to get an opportunity to get a college education, and that should be all you should be happy about. I'm happy for the way that the game has evolved and the way the game has changed as well. But no one ever talks to you about the injuries that you're going to sustain from the career that you've chosen. I mean, that would have had to been something that would have been discussed when we were, 13, 12. Some kids start as early as 7 or 8. Yeah. I was fortunate enough. I didn't start playing football until I was almost 14. My passion for the sport would have probably overruled any thinking I would have thought about it. I love the game more than than I could ever tell you. It was a blessing for me. So many people will tell you about the pains, the woes, but I'll probably talk to you more about the opportunities and the blessings that game was able to give me.
Yeah. And then do you think that playing football in the 80s, obviously there were a lot more risks involved than there are now because there have been so many changes between like the gear and like rules and stuff like that. Looking back on how it was played then and all the players that like you were saying with all your friends that have had knee and hip surgeries and stuff with all the long-term injuries that they have sustained, do you think it was worth it for everyone then? And like, if you could, would you still go back and do it again? Like, is that something
Well, let me start with the first part of that question. Has the game evolved, and is it more? Is it harder now? I think the injuries now are a lot less because of the game has changed. Yes, without a doubt, it was a lot more vicious game back in the 80s as well as in the 70s. The gear has improved, which is a blessing. Would I have done it again without telling you unequivocally? I would have still played the game. Allowed my son to play the game. I love the game. I still work with the game as it is with high school that I oversee here in California. There's inherent risk in anything you do in life. I tell people that way. You could be Tony Hawk and decide you want to be a skateboarder. There are certain things in life that we do. There are guys who go in the coal mine and dig for coal. So they deal with all kind of inherent diseases. I hate to say it's one of those risks in life that we all take. Everybody's a little different. People who stare at a screen all day they inherently lose eyesight if they don't do things to protect their eyes. So would I do it again? Unequivocally, yes. And I just love the game of football, especially the things that I was able to get from the game of football.
Yeah. So that kind of goes into my next question a little bit. How did it like impact your life for like the better and for the worse? Like just in general, like how did it change your life and like?
I want to give you that answer in two ways. Okay. We all understand the financial gains that you get from the game of football, and people tend to talk about that before they talk about any of the other things. But inherently, of course, for a mother, I was raised by my mom. Probably the most she ever made in her life was probably $23,000 in 1 year. When you're making $3 an hour, standing on your feet, 45, 50 hours a week, financially, the game of football for me was a true blessing. I can tell you that today's game is even more of a blessing for these young kids because they get guarantees, they get a lot more money. It ain't even comparable. I can't even tell you.
They're signing
Secondly,
crazy.
Right. And secondly, what the game did for me, it gave me an opportunity to get an education. I was the first in my family, which I've got a family that now has a Supreme Court judge, has had preachers, lawyers, doctors, CPA accountants, postmasters, which had degrees. I was the first one in my family to get a degree. And I got a pretty large family. My father's family, he was one of 13 kids. So that's just kind of give you an idea. So from an educational standpoint, the game gave me an opportunity to go to what I think is the greatest university on earth, the University of Notre Dame. Never would have had an opportunity to go to that university without the game of football. So those are the blessings that I feel I got from it, and what the game did for me as an individual. I hate to use this as a scenario, but some people always talk about being a big fish in a small pond. I was able to be a big fish in a small pond, in a medium pond, and then the largest pond. It just vaulted my life where I can walk into situations and people are prepared not only to hear me because I'm Greg Bell, that so-called celebrity, but I'm Greg Bell with an education to back it. And they know that I'm qualified to do things that I never would have gotten had I not gone to the University of Notre Dame.
That's nice to have that opportunity to football, have it affect
you just listen up. I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
It's nice that football was able to like impact your life in their positive ways too. That like
without the game of football, I tell you this, and I've told this to many people. I don't know where I would be today because I grew up in the inner city. Like I said, my dad was in another state. My mom did everything she could do to supply for me and my sisters, but this game put me in a whole different stratosphere, which I think it did for a lot of guys. I love the game. I watch it. I spend most of my life circles around the game that I played. And, it was a job for me when I played it. But yeah, I miss it from a standpoint of, I remember when I was young. I'm 60 years old now, wishing I was 22 again. So that's how much I love the game. Yeah. It just, like I said, it did for me what I knew it did for a lot of people in my same scenario. It just elevated my stature. It elevated I hate to use that sort of aura, but there was an aura that kind of, when you walk in the room, people were able to look at you and go, oh, that's who that is. Yeah. And it carries on to the day, to this day now.
Yeah, that's nice to hear. So next question is, so when you played, so again, I said a lot of this was focused on helmets, and you were a running back. They get hit pretty hard. Like there's a lot of contact involved with being a running back. So how did you feel your helmet? Like, did you feel like it protected your head? And like, did you feel like did you feel like there were ever
Yeah, I feel
times
protected.
that injured, but like it wasn't really looked at, and like it was kind of looked over a little bit, and like.
I think that's a two-part question, what you're asking. One, you said that I felt protected. And I will tell you, I felt protected with the helmet on my head. I sure enough wouldn't want to go head up, with those old leather helmets they used to wear back in the day. In terms of, did they tell us, I wish I would have known more. I think because of the way we were taught to tackle back then and taught to hit, we use that helmet sometimes as a battering ram. So for me, would I have liked to have known? Yes, I'm sure everybody would like to know the inherent dangers that come with something that you're wearing or you're using. That's, no one ever tells a person who gets behind the car, inherently, there's, 1 in a million chance you're going to get in an accident today and kill yourself. We don't say that, because guess what? People would be like, oh, no, I'm not getting in that car today.
Like, no thanks.
So, So when you start talking about those inherent things that are going to come with it, I felt protected in the helmet. Now I know a lot of things that happened over the course of my career. It wouldn't have been avoided, but some of the precautions or some of the things to better prepare myself going forward could have been done. I played the game from the 9th grade through 9 years of the National Football League. So what's that? 9, 4, 4. So what we got there? About 17 years. I took a lot of hits, a lot of collisions, and a lot of straight head collisions. Yes, I would have loved to, to tell you, I was never, in 17 years, I was never diagnosed with a concussion. Did I think I had concussions? I was knocked out one time, and then it was partly because of a broken scapula, and you supposedly have all these neurons that run through your scapula up through your neck, through your brain. But when I collapsed, I fell, busted up my head, and I woke up like 6 hours later. I never was diagnosed in my exiting reports as having a concussion, which I'm sure I probably did.
Yeah.
Did I ever see stars? Yeah, you see the little white lights flash in front of you. Is that a concussion? I don't know. We played through that because in our day, that was, if you came out for something that week, oh man, he's a crybaby right now. There are a lot of things that could have happened back in the 80s that would have avoided some of the things that may occur in my life. I don't know. I don't have headaches. I think I have all my cells working up here. There are a lot of things that I did in life to prevent some of the things, not to make it a negative, but, I'm not a person who drinks. I've never drank a day in my life. So it's one of those things where, did that help up here a little bit? I'm sure it did. Knowing what I know about alcohol and things of that nature. I've never done drugs. I've never smoked. There's a lot of things I've never done that probably can help me from, fighting what may occur in the future. I don't know. I don't dream about it. I don't think about it. I don't worry about it. Things that occur in your life, you deal with them when you get them and when you have to deal with them. And you try and do the things that will prevent it. So I try and, eat clean. I try and take the right supplements. I try and take vitamins, drink all the things. Those are all you can do in life just to live, and we're going to do them just to live our life anyway. So I try and just make sure I'm doing the things to keep what cells I got still working up there, keep them working.
Yeah. And as far as the rules go, they have changed a lot, even in the past 10 years, like definitely a lot since the 80s when you were playing. Do you they have become very focused in terms of player safety, and there's no helmet to helmet, and no there are a lot of more of safety rules based around safety than there used to be. Do you think that these changes should have been made earlier? Are these changes that you wish you had when you were playing? And
oh, of course, I wish I would have had them when I was playing. There, all the rules that have been made today to make the game safer, better, create longevity. I wish I would have had all of them, but
Yeah.
that's the part of what they call evolution. There's so many things that are going to occur. What we see today will probably be slightly different 20 years from today.
Yeah.
I remember when I came into the game in when I first made it to the pros in 1984, and I walked into Buffalo. Can I tell you, you'll understand this change. In 1984, we had about 12,000 people when I walked out to play a game. Now, what do you see?
Well, I'm from DC, so when I moved here, I was 11, and so I was like, "There's nobody here. It's tiny." But there are definitely more than 12,000 people here.
Exactly. Everything. The team went from being 2-14 to now, they've gone 14-2 on occasions.
Yeah.
Evolution is evolution. Wins and losses. That's the game. It's supposed to improve. The thing about the National Football League, if it didn't do these things, we would be even more upset. But it's got to evolve. It's got to improve. And part of that is becoming more safer. And it makes more money than anything right now. So that tells you what they're doing is a good thing for the kids. It's a blessing for the young men who are getting the opportunity to play it. But at the same time, it's an enjoyable game to watch for those people who have passion about it.
Yeah. And now the players actually have like helmets that they can choose from. Like there's a list that the NFL has of like what they deem as like the safest helmets down to like what they deem as like okay, but like not ideal. And I think it's like 99% of players are in like NFL, like the NFL has recommended they are in those helmets, like, but they are allowed to choose like which ones they want. How
we were allowed to choose too.
Oh, you were okay. So like, did you have like, was it still like the same thing? Like there was a list with like.
Well, no, it wasn't a list. There were only about 4 helmet companies back in the day. Of course, you had Bike, which is now the Revel Speeds, things of that nature. Rawling, and I think the other company was, there were 3 helmet companies, I think, back in that day. And but there were probably about 3 or 4 different styles of helmet you could choose. My entire career, I wore what's called a bike helmet, and I don't know what the company is called today, but it was the one where you put air in it. And those are probably used more today than they were when I played, because a lot of players just liked having those foam cushions. Yeah. But I literally could pump air and compress and put more protection into my helmet. So when I hit, it was more cushion. I could take air out of it when I didn't want to have it really tight on my head. But when the game started, trust me, I pumped it up with air, and it cups your head, and you knew you were, you had that air pressure inside. It was almost like an like the airbag that flies out the car, out the steering wheel. It was pumped with air, and a lot of players don't put air in it. But when the game was being played, I pumped mine up with air. I did do that.
Oh, that's okay. So was it like something where did you know a lot of other players that did that, or was that like
most players wore what they were comfortable with? And when I went to college, I wore a Rydell helmet, and there's 3 different types of Rydell. There was one Rydell helmet that would leave a terrible dark pad across. It pushed too much on your forehead, so I didn't like that one. And I had friends who used to have, like, you could see the dark scarring. It left right on their forehead after the season, because it compressed right here. And I remember seeing that helmet, and I hated it. It just didn't feel good on my helmet. And so they gave me like 3. Most teams back then, their big company was Rydell. They tried to push you into wearing the Rydell. And like I said, they had 3 different styles. I came from Notre Dame with a bike helmet. I knew I wanted a bike helmet. And the helmet that I still have today was the helmet that it's the same style. When I got to Buffalo, they didn't have the helmet I wanted. So I actually had my bike helmet from college. And you laugh about that. we joke about O.J. Simpson. Oh, the Jews had such a big head, he had to wear the helmet that he had in college because nobody had the size to fit him.
My dad has a huge head.
So, but then, as by my second year in the league, I think it was, bike became like an official helmet that you can use. So I got a bike helmet, and I actually have my Notre Dame helmet painted gold again, but I still have that bike helmet. That's all I like wearing, and so that's what I wore. So that was just my choosing. A lot of players, they wore the Rydell, but I knew a lot of players who wore the bike as well. And man, I can't remember that other company, but there was another company that, and it was pretty well padded as well. But Rydells weren't padded that well to me.
Okay. So we talked about this a little bit earlier. Like, was there any time after you got hurt that you thought about retiring, or like was there any time where you're like, I don't know if like it's worth it anymore? Or did you always were you always just eager to get back out on the field and start playing?
You know what? Injuries come as part of the game. And I mean, it took 2 years of my life, when I tore my abdomen. That was probably the worst time. But I remember when I did a 360 when I was at Notre Dame and my foot stayed in the ground. So I did a complete, and the foot just spun around. So they had to do reconstructive surgery on my ankle. And doctor walked in and said, there's a possibility I'd never run again. As a son of a preacher, we don't put faith in man, we kind of put faith in God. So I put my faith where I knew it should be at that point. And in terms of ever walking away from the game, I knew when it was time to walk away. I mean, my 9th year in the league, I was in Green Bay. I started the day in the ice tub and I finished the day in the ice tub. And I knew at that point, I was going to be in a lot of discomfort. And just so happened, maybe 3 or 4 months later, my back ended up going and the nerve kind of gets shut off, compressed completely. I had had two herniated discs earlier in the year, earlier in my career. And I just kept kind of shooting them up to numb the pain and just play with them. Right. And by this time, 9 years into the league, I kind of knew it was time. And so I just walked away. Do I wish I could have gone back and played? Without a doubt. When my back surgeon did the surgery, I was like, oh, now I can go back now. He looked at me and said, no more playing for you. No, he's like, no more playing for you. This is about it. And you would love to go back. I would have, if I could have gone back, I would have gone back. But, this is one of those kind of games where, I was blessed to play 8 years. I probably was shooting for 10 because it's probably been a little bit more money with 10, more bang to the buck. Bang to the buck, I should. Yeah. But, I don't walk away. I know a lot of players, I remember when I came into the game, players would say, you never walk away. You tell them, let them throw you out.
And then, so you said earlier you have a son. Did you?
Yes.
How old is he?
He's 26 now.
Did he ever play? Did you ever want him to play? And
he played through high school and then had a scholarship to go to Michigan State to do it. And he decided he wanted to do something else. And that was his choosing. Now, he loves the game. He still plays the game. He actually was in Brazil playing American football last year. It's one of those choices. I know a lot of my friends who have said, no, I'm not going to let my son play this game. Yeah. And I know a lot of my friends, I got a lot of good friends whose sons are starring in the game right now in the NFL. It's great when I can go see, a kid of that I remember when he was born, like Matthew Slater, who plays for New England. When Matthew was born, he's an early baby. We weren't sure he's going to make it, and so now you go see he's been playing in the NFL for 16 years. Oh. And so it's always a blessing. To me, it's like a blessing to be able to see one of my buddies or one of my teammates' sons playing in the National Football League, because we all really love the game.
Yeah. And then so you made the Pro Bowl your rookie year.
Mm-hmm.
which is pretty incredible. Not a lot of people do that. Was there like, your rookie year, you were with Buffalo, you had gone in the first round, you were like, how did that feel like being able to make like such a huge impact your first year?
Well, I tell you what, it's, because of the career, the ups and the downs, it was a great thing. I started to learn more about the NFL. That rookie year was a learning process for me because I left a university where, every game was sold out. And I walked into Buffalo where every game was, if we got 10,000, we were going to be happy. We weren't a very good team, weren't very well coached. We had some really good players. That's the one thing I will say about that team. When you get to the National Football League, you're seeing the best, what is it, something like 1,800 guys. They are the best at what they do. And there are some teams that are put together well. There's some that are not put together well. Norm Pollen, who I love to the day he passed away, he did a good job of drafting. The players we had in Buffalo, you can say what you want to say about a lot of teams. Even some great teams have great players and they go 2-14. The NFL is a mental game. And sometimes when you get into that funk, you can't get out of it. I learned a lot from that Buffalo team, and I learned a lot from going to the Pro Bowl, seeing how the top tier guys, how they react and how they live and how they prepare themselves. And I think if anything, I learned that having that much success at the beginning of my career, when it tapered down and I wasn't having the success, when I got those 2 years that I was injured, I ended up getting traded and going back to Los Angeles. Probably the one thing I learned was never to give up on myself, because I'd seen, I saw guys who were, the Jerry Butlers, the Joe Cribbs, Joe Ferguson. These are guys that were great college athletes. They were great pros. And I think being a part of a 2-14 teams, you saw what it felt like. I don't say this from a negative. No. When you stop believing in yourself and you start to give up a little bit. And then you go to a team like the Los Angeles Rams that never had a losing season of that nature, and you see what winning feels like, and all of a sudden you go 13-3. Yeah, so I was able to see what I learned from that experience in Buffalo, and I understood with the snap of a finger being in Los Angeles that anything could change, and it can change in the snap of a finger. So never give up on your dreams. Never give up on what you you're capable of doing, and you just got to always believe in yourself. And so I think that's probably what I learned most of going 2-14 in Buffalo and being really successful, because I got a chance to be around a lot of other successful guys. Whether you see them as successful or not, like I tell all the time, if you get and you make it in on a team in the National Football League, a lot of guys are living their dream. Yeah. And not too many men in this world get a chance to live their dream. So believe in yourself, be confident in things, in your choices, and just, keep God first and keep playing.
Yeah. Because you had 2 really good years with the Rams. You led the NFL with rushing touchdowns for 2 of those years. With 15 and 16, you did really well with the Rams too. Okay, and then just one last question, and then I'll let you go. But what was your favorite part of playing? Like, what was it that really?
You know what? I think every player in the National Football League will probably give you, if you think about the answer, running out of a tunnel and hearing 85 to 90 to 100,000 people cheering for you. And you hear that, and to be able to sit back, take a deep breath, and see literally that you're getting a chance to live your dream. I tell people, and I think when I was speaking I used to do a program about anti-drunk driving for the governor, Mario Cuomo, when I was in New York, and then for Nancy Reagan. And the one thing I said at the end of each speech is that come up here and pinch me because I'm still sleeping. For 9 years of my life, I slept through everything because God gave me an opportunity to live my dream.
Yeah.
When I walk out and I see guys, they look at me and go, "Oh man, you played in the National Football League." I'm looking at gentlemen and boys and men and young men who had the exact same dream that I had. And I'm probably less than 0.5% that got to live their dreams. And that's the same thing that goes for guys who play pro basketball. To play professional sports for a living is a dream. It really is. And I just thank God every day that he gave me a chance to live that dream.
That's good to hear. Thank you so much for all your time. I really enjoyed this. This was very helpful. Thank you so much.
Well, good. And here's the thing I'll tell you about the injuries. And I know one thing I was hoping you would ask a question, but you didn't. So I'm going to give you something.
Please do.
What's going on in the National Football League and going on in our world today with head injuries is something that, we've been dealing with an open mind and an open eye. So many times I think it was kind of held, unfortunately the owners knew about it more than we knew about it. But you can't be afraid to wing it. I tell people all the time, you can walk out of the house tomorrow and get hit by a car.
Yeah.
I just chose to get hit by a car every time I carried the football. And that collision was something that I was going to embrace, and I just had to, take the fear out. I think I don't want to call it fear mongering, but I think because we know more now, we take a fearful thought at what's happening in the National Football League or what's happening. There's so many sports and so many entertainment that have a chance of damaging something. It could be a Hollywood stuntman. It could be Tom Cruise trying to reenact that, climbing, and he wants to do his own stunts.
Yeah.
We do things that we're passionate about, and we don't really think about the consequences. I'm happy now that somebody is actually thinking about the consequences for us because, like I told you, it wouldn't make me any difference. I love this game. It gave me too many opportunities that I know I never would have gotten without it. Would I have been the same person? I would have been the same person. I just might not have had that aura that sometimes I think I walk around with. Sometimes football players think they're bigger than what they really are. And I'm a point the figure. Sometimes I think I'm bigger than what I really am. Stephanie will tell you that. But it's one of those things where I don't walk out in life with fear. I think when you have your focus and you have a blessing that God's there and he's protecting you, you can go through life, footloose and fancy and free. So that's kind of how I kind of look at the what's going on. And I've never been fearful of CTE. If it happens to me, I'm saddened by the friends that I know it's affected. The first person in the National Football League to ever take his life was like my big brother, Dave Dorson. And so Dave was super close to me. And I hate that was his choice of getting out of this problem. But it's a problem I know he chose, and I know his love for the game just as much as I know my love for the game. But there are some side effects with anything, but we can't walk into life. We can't walk and be in life being scared of doing anything. You got to just kind of wing it.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. But thank you so much.
You're welcome. Hopefully you get something. This report helped. My interview helps your report.
It definitely has.
All right.
Different perspective.
Well, take care.
Thank you so much.
All right. Take care. Go Bills.
Go Bills. Hopefully we get it together now.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.